تحياتنا لكم. اكيد نحن ناطرين. تحياتنا لكم اكيد جميع متابعين واتساب ميديا نتورك، ان كنتوا عم تحضرونا على الفيسبوك او على اليوتيوب. اكيد هيدا البث حبينا نعمله لحتى نواكب التاون هول اللي عاملينه مدارس ديربورن العامة ليشرحوا خطتهم لعودة الطلاب إلى المدارس. رح يكون الحديث تبعهم رح يكون باللغة الإنجليزية، فحبينا نحن نطلع لايف لنحكي باللغة العربية ونترجم لكم باللغة العربية شو هي الخطة تبع مدارس ديربون اللي من خلالها رح يرجعوا للمدارس. فأكيد بس يبلشوا بالحديث رح ننتقل نحن بنقل مباشر لحتى ننقل وقائع هيدا التاون هول ونشرح لكم كل الخطة تبعهم، يعني كيف رح تفتح المدارس، كيف رح يكون الدوام، إذا في learning labs، شو الموضوع. فأكيد نحن في انتظار إنه مدارس ديربون يفتحوا. خلينا نتأكد إنه بلش الميتينج تبعهم ولا لا، لأنه بعد مش مبين، لا بعده مش مبلش. فنحن في انتظار إنه يبلش الميتينج تبع الاجتماع والبث المباشر تبع مدارس ديربون العامة لحتى ننقلكم وقائع هيدا البث المباشر اللي هن من خلاله رح يشرحوا للعالم الخطة تبعهم بالنسبة لموضوع إعادة فتح المدارس. فنحن في هذا الانتظار حسب ما تحدث المسؤولين عن مدارس ديربون إنه هن رح يشرحوا اليوم عن موضوع إنه كيف رح تفتح المدارس، امتى رح تفتح المدارس، شو رح يكون الدوام تبع الطلاب اللي ما عندوش كمبيوتر. خليني انتقل شكله نبلش الجماعة. اللي ما عنده كمبيوتر كيف في يعني يستعمل الكمبيوتر تبعهم. تمام. نحن تمام. خليني لكن انتقل لديربون بابليك سكول، رح علق قد ما فيني انا على الموضوع.
Good evening and welcome to a very special town hall event as we get ready for the start of another school year. Just to get right to it, good evening. I'm going to let everybody know off the top. I do not have your Schoolology login or password. I do not have that for this meeting. And off the top, there goes half our viewers right there. So. And for the rest of you who have stuck around and waited and going to take part in this meeting, good evening. I'm David Mustinen, Director. A few minutes to discuss this next hour and 15 minutes as we explore what is going to be the start of a school year like no other. And of course, the gentleman here to answer all your questions are Superintendent of the Dearborn Public Schools, Dr. Glenn Maleko. Glenn, thank you for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I like your mask. You get the students first. You know, mine are in the wash right now. So,
okay.
You know, it's the new routine. And just so you know, then you can ignore that last email I sent you about 5 o'clock asking for my password. Since
okay.
you know, right. Just so you know, because I don't want you to waste time on that. So,
all right. Well, speaking of masks, we are wearing these because we want to model good behavior. We are socially distanced apart, and we are taking part in a television interview, which is also exempt from the rules. So and just to make things a little easier so you can hear us a little better, we are going to remove our mask for this dialogue. But our guest will be joining us virtually, which will help quite a bit and keep us all socially distanced from each other, so we're following all the rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
Glenn, it's obviously going to be a different start to the 2021 school year. Your thoughts as we get ready to begin that year?
Sure. So we're excited to start the year, but it's going to be a year like no other. Obviously, we're dealing with a pandemic right now, and so what I would say is Dearborn Schools always leads the way. We have a great leadership team. It started with our committee. You know, we're involved in the reopening plan, aligned with the governor. We're following all regulations. We've been here at ASC following all safety protocols. So one of the things we want parents to know is that health and safety come number one. That's, you know, the decisions by the governor and others and the Wayne County Health Department, our nurses, one of them will be joining us, and others, the whole district working together as a team, health and safety number one. education is important, but this is a pandemic because it's a health crisis. So we have to put that first, as we always do, just as we would in a snow day. You know, we don't want to cancel school, just like we want to be in person. We know in-person learning is the best, but we have to weigh that against the health and safety of the community. And we do the same thing when we would cancel on a snow day or an ice day, or the polar vortex, or in some cases, students may want me to cancel when it rains, but you know, unfortunately we can't do that. But now it's too bad, because we are in a situation where students cannot come right now in person. However, we do know that some students really need the in-person. So as we open our plan online, and we're going to phase in, and we want parents to know that if you don't have your Schoology password, or you don't have all the detail, it's kind of like this first day of school. We go around the district, and normally I'd be in several schools, you would, and I visit every school the first week. I go to every single school. And you know, sometimes it takes a day or so to get things sorted out. It's going to be the same thing here. It's just that it's online. And so what we're asking parents to do is to be patient, work with us. I got to tell you, the IT department is churning over an entire network system within a month, which is probably usually a year work. So we're condensing everything. The staff has been working hard, the community, everyone coming forward. And so what I would just tell people is, you know, if you don't have everything exactly the way you may like it on the first day, it's okay, because we're allowing for that soft start. It's going to take some time to phase things in. We know that. And secondly, we've got to all be flexible, because the situations could change and will change. And we're hoping it's going to change for the better. We're hoping we're in person. We're hoping we get good news, hoping we get a vaccine, or however to deal with it. But if we're not, we have to prepare for the alternative. And that's what we've done with our online learning platform. So we're, you know, looking for working together with parents, with staff. We have an outstanding staff, outstanding parents. I've been here now 25 years. We just had new teachers that came on Monday, and I had to do it virtually with them. And normally I'm there with them, and I could tell them, look, I remember 24 years ago when I was in your shoes. So we have great staff that we hire, but we have to understand that we all have to work together. And we also understand that staff are parents too, and they're dealing with situations. So we appreciate the support of the community, the parents. We're looking forward to the start of the year. I may see students online, virtually, 1-minute messages, comments, things like that. And so we're very excited to start the school year, as we always are, albeit a little different this year.
Albeit a little different, obviously. And you know, there's plenty of great information that is out there. And we want parents to know that, please visit the Dearborn Public Schools website. We've got special pages set up that talk about just the reopening of schools. We've got pages set up that talk about the virtual learning program, which is a separate program for those parents who know they do not want to come back into schools. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And we also have information on COVID-19, and we have a special page set up just for that as well. So please, we want parents to go to those and use those resources. Also, please go to your school's website and webpage. I just checked several schools. I just checked a little while ago. Several schools are already putting up messages about the first day and about the first week and where to go. And during this weekend, even you'll be getting emails from schools and even possibly from your teachers about new information. So as Dr. Malenko pointed out, be patient, be flexible, look for those resources that are coming your way. Look to the school's website, look to the district's website. That's where this information is, and we're here to help you get through this as well and get through that information. Yeah. You know, you talked about possibly our schools, you know, we're hoping that we're moving in the right direction. And we want to be able to get into that phase where we're actually having kids back in our schools. But a lot has to happen before that can happen. And to maybe help us explain and get a grip on this whole COVID-19 virus, our protocols that we have in place, and that, I think we should go to the experts. And we have had an incredible team of experts that have been working with us. Our school nurses, all of them have just been phenomenal since March.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've done an outstanding job. You saw it at the board meeting. You've seen the appreciation from the board, from all of us. And they've been working all summer, because as we're dealing with potential cases or positive cases or exposures, which has been going on as we've had different athletic programs, we've had to work with the nurses and the county health department. They've been providing
Me. I'm going to start right into it because we've got quite a bit of stuff to tackle in just a few minutes here. But
Sure.
I'd like
بس للي ما سمعوني كنت عم بقول انه ديربون بابليك سكولز كانوا عم يحكوا انه هن المدارس مش رح تكون مثل ما هي مثل قبل، لانه رح تكون اونلاين، رح يكون التعليم عن بعد. هلا رح يكون في ضيوف معهم ليشرحوا اكثر شو هي الخطه تبعهم، فرح نرجع نحن للضيوف ونسمع شو عم يحكوا.
Everyone loves our Dearborn school community and that you'll do your part to follow our procedures as we enter back into school. What we do right now in school buildings, even before our students return, is so important to controlling those outbreaks. So I'm going to start in with just a little bit of information, and then we'll kind of roll through this as we can. So first thing is, how does COVID spread? Well, we know that COVID spreads through droplets, and those are small particles that enter the air when we cough and sneeze and laugh, yell, and sing. And those droplets can be shared by using personal items in between. So sharing drinks and hookahs and vape pens, silverware, and other things that can go from one person's mouth to another. COVID-19 can also spread through aerosols. Those are smaller particles that are created when we breathe, talk, sing, sneeze, or cough, and through objects where droplets and aerosols have settled. We can reduce the spread of COVID-19 by increasing our efforts using outdoor ventilation, frequent hand washing, not touching our face, frequent cleaning and disinfection, and using automatic and touchless controls. So how do we get infected with COVID-19? Many factors influence if you will get COVID-19 after being exposed to the virus. The first aspect is how much of the virus we're exposed to. And the more virus you're exposed to, the more likely you are to get sick. For example, if a person is coughing and sneezing without a mask on, they're exposing you to more virus than someone who has no symptoms and is wearing a mask. Sitting directly next to a person who's COVID-19, talking face-to-face exposes you more than to the virus than sitting 6 feet away from them with your back turned. Another factor that influences our risks of contracting COVID-19 is the length of time that you're exposed to the virus. For example, if you shared a classroom all day for several days with a person who has COVID-19, you're at a greater risk. Even if your seat was not within 6 feet of the infected person. The third factor is your personal health. Having a healthy immune system and using risk reduction methods decreases your vulnerability to contracting the disease. So these are things that we've been looking at throughout our summertime, and we've been trying to prepare for the return and how to make schools safe while we have everyone back. The first thing that we're going to need to be doing and through the governor's orders is a screening tool. Every staff member and visitor and every student is going to need to be screened prior to their entry into school buildings. So for the health and safety of our students and staff, and because of Executive Order 2021-45, it requires that students are screened and staff are screened before they enter our buildings. We have several tools that we'll be using that come directly from Wayne County Health Department, and those can look different ways. It may be a hard copy tool that we have families screening their children before they bring them to school, and maybe even a virtual component to that. So what happens if someone at school gets COVID-19? First, the school and the health department learn about the case. Only a select few at school are going to know the identity of that person. The COVID positive person's identity must be kept confidential in order to respect their privacy as well as follow our HIPAA and FERPA regulations. The school will assist the health department in determining close contacts to the positive case and in what areas of the school will need additional cleaning. Then we start contact tracing. A person with COVID-19 is considered contagious about 48 hours before they first start showing symptoms, or if they've never had symptoms on the date of their positive test. Finally, the close contacts are quarantined, and a close contact is someone who is 6 feet from an infected person for at least 15 minutes. Close contacts to a person with COVID-19 are at risk for getting sick, and they must be identified and quarantined. Quarantine separates people who were exposed to a contagious disease to see if they become sick. A large majority of the close contacts will never get COVID-19, but we must be cautious because it's contagious. Since close contacts are not yet known to be infected, the contacts or those people who are exposed to them need to be quarantined. We'll be working with direct guidance from Wayne County Health Department to determine who needs to be quarantined and who needs to be isolated. One of the big things here is that staff and students should not go to school or attend any sport activities if they're having any symptoms of COVID-19. If they start having symptoms while at school, they'll be sent home. They may return to school based on the guidance of their diagnosis, and families and staff must notify the school if they test positive for COVID. As long as there are COVID-19 cases in the community, there's no way to prevent all risk of COVID-19 spread in schools. The goal is to keep school and school activities as safe as possible. If students do not go to school, they will still be at risk for contracting COVID-19 from their interactions in their own communities. Regarding the testing, a staff member or parent or guardian of the student will be instructed to call their healthcare provider and follow the guidance from them. An adult can also visit the website that's going to be located on our school page or our school websites to find the closest COVID-19 testing location. It's important that that you're getting tested for COVID-19. The health department recommends a nasal swab as opposed to the rapid antigen tests. So I want to encourage people to go and get the nasal swabs as opposed to rapid antigen, because that helps us with our guidance on how to react to a situation. Again, we follow the guidance with Wayne County Health Department. We are in close contact with them almost on a daily basis to make sure that we're doing what we can in our community. What if someone is exposed outside of school? There's a couple scenarios just to give an example. So if a person is a household member of someone who's determined to be a close contact to a positive case, the person will be excluded from school for 14 days past their last exposure to that person that's positive. In a second scenario, if a person is a household member or a close contact of someone who has symptoms or who is waiting to get their test results back, you do not need to quarantine, and you may continue to attend school and monitor for symptoms. Of course, if you develop symptoms, you should stay home and call your primary care provider to be tested for COVID-19. In the event that the pending test result comes back positive, you will follow the previous guidelines. And if any household member tests positive, any person in that household is considered close contact and should quarantine for 14 days. I'm not going to remember or expect everybody to remember all of this stuff. That's why you have your nursing staff. But we'll be working closely with you and with the Wayne County Health Department so that we can walk through this together and get everybody to school safely. We're missing everyone, and we can't wait to see you again.
We appreciate that, Amy, Nurse Candace, and
Thank you for your hard work.
اكيد اللي قالته كانت عم تحكي النيرس تبع ديربون بابليك سكولز، الممرضه اللي بتشتغل بديربون بمدارس ديربون العامه، اشارت الى اكثر من نقطه بالنسبه للاشخاص اللي كيف رح يتعاملوا مع الاشخاص اللي هن بينصابوا بالكوفيد 19 بالكورونا فيروس او بيتعرضوا لحدا منصاب. بشكل عام النقط اللي قالتهم انه الهويه تبع هيدا الشخص اللي رح ينصاب بالكوفيد 19 بقلب المدرسه رح تضليها سريه برايفت، ما رح يقولوا لحدا عنها. رح يطلعوا 48 ساعه لورا مع مين هيدا الشخص كان عنده تعامل بطريقه مباشره، ويشوفوا هودي الاشخاص اللي بيسموهم هن كلوز كونتاكتس. حلا شخص انت كنت قاعد انت وياه لاكثر من 15 دقيقه وكان في المسافه تبعكم 6 فيت بس، هودي الاشخاص بدهم يعملوا كورنتين ل 14 يوم. وعم بيقولوا هن رح يتعاملوا مع وين كاوني، السلطه المحليه الصحيه بوين كاوني، وكمان بيطلبوا من الاشخاص تبع المدارس لما بيكون عندهم هذا الموضوع ياخذوا النيزل سواب تبع المنخار، مش يعملوا هيدا الفحص تبع الدم تبع الرابid تيست السريع. والشغله الثانيه اذا انت اكسبوزد، يعني انت كنت مش انه مصاب، معرض لواحد قاعد مع واحد معه كورونا فيروس، بتقعد برات المدرسه 14 يوم لحتى يتاكدوا انه انت خالي من الكورونا فيروس. خلينا نرجع لنشوف اكثر اسئله من ديربون بابليك سكولز.
Bye-bye. One of the many hardworking nurses in our district who have been very busy. You know, Amy, she reminds me of a very famous actress, and I can't think of it right now, but I know it'll come to me, and I'll throw it out there by the end of the show. You know, the other thing that I really, you know, is important, she pointed out, and I think it's important to point out, is we're not going to eliminate COVID-19. Our job, all of us, I'm not saying us, I'm saying all of us as a community, our job is to slow the spread. Wear the mask, social distance, wash your hands, all of these, avoid large crowds. All of these things we need to do together as a community to slow the spread. We're not going to stop it. It's a virus. It's out there. And that's what's the important part. We have to take as many steps as possible. So, and we're going to do a quick mic check.
And I can just
switch.
With me.
So I think we're going to swap out. We're going to swap out Glenn's microphone here, and we'll keep on going. So yeah, so that's what's really important, and that's what we have to remember. All.
اكيد بس بدي احب اشير لنقطه انه الصوت نحن عم ناخده من ديربون بابليك سكول، يعني من مدارس ديربون عم ناخد الصوت، فاذا انقطع الصوت في بعض الاحيان هو بسبب مشكله من عند ديربون بابليك سكولز مش من عنا. فرجع الصوت.
Bringing very small number of students on a very limited basis, rotating them throughout the day so that we don't have those crowds, and we can ease our way back into this so that we can see how things go and see how things develop.
Yeah, and we feel very good about the fact that, look, when it happened in March and when the pandemic hit, we didn't know a lot of things. And obviously the governor closed the state and the schools for a reason. You know, back then we didn't know about the mask wearing and all these things. We knew about some things, but now we have more information based on the safety and the sciences and, you know, the testing and the other things. You know, I do think still that we still need a greater amount of testing in the nation and for us. And I've spoken to legislatures about that in our network meetings, federal legislators and state. But I do think that more testing would be helpful to us so that, because as a district, we don't have the capability to do massive levels of COVID testing. We need the support of the federal government and the local healthcare providers. And we're trying to work out agreements maybe to work with them so that we get consistent results. But again, you know, I got into this as an educator, as superintendent. We have a lot of things. I never would have thought that we'd be dealing and understand this to the level we do. So we're doing our best, but we have to partner with community groups. That's, I think, why the governor put, you know, you must work with your county health department. And we do trust them because of the relationship we've built. You heard how Ms. Candace, Amy spoke about, you know, the work that they're doing, and they're following the regulations. So.
Right. Yeah. And that's all great information. And so that's part of what we're, you know, going to talk about. We talked about here tonight. There's several subjects that we want to touch on. The next being technology. And as you can see, technology, and you never know when technology is going to go bad. And right now, we both just had to switch out our microphones because we had a little glitch going on there. And we know that we've got a lot of technology, you know, changes coming up. And so we thought we'd bring on our own technology expert, our own guru of technology, director of technology, Troy Patterson. Troy is joining us here, and Fatmi is here, but she'll be joining us in a little bit. And right now,
Michigan.
There we go.
Yeah.
And there we go. Troy is now joining us.
The same kind of light with the
So Troy, a big switch, big change coming in the platform that we'll be using to deliver online instruction. Schoolology is what we'll be using, and Zoom will be what we'll be using for our meetings. Maybe you want to just give us a brief overview of that and how that's going to work.
Absolutely. First of all, I will take you out to the shed on the pronunciation.
Okay.
Because it is Schoology.
Schoology.
So
I gotcha.
You need to pronounce it as Schoology.
Schoology. Like a eulogy, but Schoology.
We'll get you there.
Okay.
That's right.
What about Zoom? How do we say
Zoom? Yeah, am I okay on Zoom?
Your Zoom, you nailed. So that's a 50%.
I got to work on that.
You'll have to work on that. You know, I think back to Arthur C. Clarke is famous for a quote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And the gist of that really is there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes to make things look easy and to make things work as easy as possible. And we really are. We're working really hard behind the scenes. We've got some really great people. I've got a great team with me that's working really hard at making this as easy as possible for parents and teachers and students. And the change to Schoology is pretty significant. So there's a lot of work that we're doing. And again, we want to make this as easy as possible for parents. So parents will have just a couple of places to go. They'll go to Schoology to see all of the assignments that a student that one of their kids needs to do, and they'll be able to view those. And then we'll still have Parent Connect available for grades, make sure that everything is on track as well that way, and for attendance and some of the other things as well. But I think parents are going to find that Schoology works really well for them. It allows for teachers to communicate with parents. It allows parents to communicate back to teachers. So it gives them one spot to go to. As in the past, we may have had a whole bunch of different tools that teachers were using, and this really condenses it and coalesces it down to one tool, one place for parents to go. And we had some community members, some teachers and administrators that helped us make this decision. And it's really going to be good going forward. And I just want to let everybody know that they can get their username and password from David Mustonen very soon. Really the delay right now is we're working on making this easy. We want to make sure that parents have as few usernames as possible. And then the other side of this really is security. We want to make sure that everything is secure. Unfortunately, there's some people out there that have some bad intent, and our goal is to make sure that they're not successful. So we want to make sure things are secure, things are easy to use, and they're effective. And we're really laying the groundwork for all of that to happen. So we have links on the webpage. We also have a new home learning hub, and the home learning hub really has a lot of tips for parents, a lot of resources as they make this this transition, hopefully this very temporary transition. But there's a lot of resources there, and those are things that we continue to develop as we get consistent questions. We add to that resource as well. And then, as the wonderful Mr. Mustonen said, we are also bringing Zoom in. And again, we're doing this in a secure manner. I know that early on, they had some issues, but they've upgraded their security and they've addressed those issues. And we've done a whole bunch of work in order to make sure that it's a secure platform for our kids as well. The other thing that I know that people are going to be interested in and potentially concerned about is Chromebooks. Each school has been distributing Chromebooks as appropriate, and we have a list of those schools and dates of when they're doing Chromebook distribution. And quick quiz, Mr. Mustonen, where do you think you could find information on where the Chromebooks would be distributed?
My guess would be to go to the Dearborn Public Schools website, www.dearbornschools.org. I'd scroll down about halfway down the page, and I bet there would be a nice spreadsheet right there on the page that would list all the schools, times, dates, all the pertinent information. How did I do?
And you are an A+ student, Mr. Mustonen, A+.
I'm working.
So, yeah.
I'm working at it.
Now, the other option is to email David Mustonen, isn't that the other? Of course, kidding.
we do have the information. The schools are working with families to make sure that if a family needs a Chromebook, we can loan one to them. Obviously, this is we have to guess at how many, but we have them available. We will have enough available. You may have heard on the news that you can't get them right now. Fortunately, we were proactive enough that we purchased some additional ones, and we are okay to make sure that everyone has the resources that they need. So if any families need to borrow a Chromebook, we want to make sure that we support them with that, and we have them available.
And I was at Fordson today, and I saw the distribution. Your staff was there working with the Fordson staff as parents were coming in. I was there to speak to some of the members of the transportation team, and it's a major operation, and there was a lot of Chromebooks available, and parents were coming in, and parents seemed happy that they were getting the materials and getting ready. So appreciate the work of your committee. And again, I just want to stress that a move like this for an entire platform or two platforms, normally you would phase that in over the course of a year, I would think. We're doing this within less than a month after the recommendations came in. It's because we have to, but I also appreciate, Troy, your ability to look into the security. So we talked about health and safety, but there's other security and safety that I think, in the spring, we had to make decisions on some of the platforms because of some of the safety issues. And I think it was until Zoom came in and said that they did fix their security that we finally were comfortable going with a platform like Zoom. So again, safety of our students is number one. So thank you to you and your team for the work being done. And obviously the working together with the buildings, 35 buildings, 21,000 students. We're not like we're the third largest in the state. This is a major operation that is, underway. So Troy is, and your team, it's a huge task, a huge amount of coordination. Then talk about, students and families that may not have internet access in the home. We're dealing with a lot of factors here. Or how many of us have been on a meeting and you say, oh, you froze, can't see because it
Right.
froze up.
Right.
I mean, it happens to all of us. I guess thankfully for us, we start August 31st when most schools are starting September 8th, because wait on September 8th is the state, network and internet going to happen when everybody's going on at the same time across the state. So those are other factors. So Troy, appreciate you and your team and the work you're doing.
And just as a last serious point, we will be sharing the Schoology logins and process. Those will be on the school web pages, on the district web page, and we plan on emailing those to all of the parent email addresses that we have on file as well. So we want to make sure we communicate as seamlessly as possible. We're going to be right down to the wire with exactly how that looks. But again, we want to make it as easy as possible.
Great. Well, thank you so much Troy, for all your hard work, all that you and your team are doing and getting this going. We know it's a huge task. I think too that the fact that we're starting next week with half days will give us a little bit more flexibility in getting everybody up and running, as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's why we called it an orientation, like it's a phase in, it's a soft start.
Sure.
So there's no pressure.
Great. Thank you very much, Troy, for joining us. We appreciate that very much. We'll talk to you real soon. Schoology. That's it, like eulogy, Schoology. All right, there you go. I'm going to keep practicing that. I'm going to keep moving us right along because we want to make sure we get everything in here in the hour and 15 minutes that we blocked for this. And we want to get to some questions that may pop up as well during the time here. So one of the other big components and another big questions, a lot of questions that have been coming in, have been questions about how the day is going to look. Is my kindergartner going to be sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours a day? And I think it's pretty obvious that the answer to that is no. We're not going to, that would be ridiculous to think that we're going to have a kid sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours a day. But how is that schedule going to look at each level, the elementary level, the middle school, and secondary or high school level as well? And to talk a little bit about that, we brought in one of our three experts in that area, the executive director of instruction, for the Dearborn High feeder track, Ms. Fatmi Faraj. Fatmi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone. So I want to start by saying thank you to the entire team. I am one member of a great team. I want to thank Ms. Ali Bazi for leading the entire reopening committee, Dr. Chokol, Ms. Peterson, Dr. Patterson, Ms. Al-Dubaili, Mr. Asaili, and many others, the principals and teachers who did not really have a summer vacation. So thank you all. Since we have Schoology this year, learning is going to look different than it did in the spring. We did have a great plan when we had the shutdown, but it was interrupted by security and safety for students. So we had to do some meetings or some interrupted work that resulted in deviation from the plan. But for this year, every student is going to have a schedule and every student is going to follow the schedule. A team of administrators worked the entire summer along with teachers and central office staff to create frameworks of how the schedule will be and what is it going to look like at each of the levels. So they came up with a combination of 3 different modes of instruction. The first one is called synchronous learning. The second one is called asynchronous learning, and then learning labs for selected students. I know that these are terms that we don't hear often, synchronous and asynchronous. We've gotten used to using these terms because they're not part of everyday vocabs that we use. So I will go ahead and explain what that is, and then I will go into details of what the schedule will look like. And the reason for that, the reason we had to think of different modes for learning is because we had to come up with a combination of activities that would result in the same number of hours and days and cover the content that would have been covered if we were running school the normal way without the COVID situation. So we had to, in other words, cover all subjects. We had to look at instructional minutes. We had to make sure that we are covering all courses and all subjects in elementary, middle school, and high school. So the synchronous learning resembles what we would normally do in the classroom. It's, in other words, it's called live instruction, meaning that the students are learning with the teacher through a platform like Mr. Patterson mentioned, Zoom. That's why we had looked at different conferencing tools and we selected Zoom so that the teachers and the students could be working at the same time and that's during synchronous time. The learning during synchronous unfolds in real time, meaning that the students can have discussions with the teacher, they can ask questions, the teacher will be answering these questions, the teacher can break students into groups, and she could be working with small groups while others are working independently, and then she can get the groups back together like an entire classroom. So it is like a classroom with 4 walls, and both the teachers and students are working at the same time. Asynchronous learning is learning that happens by students independently, and they would be completing assignments and activities that the teachers have assigned to them. And Mr. Patterson also mentioned Schoology. Did I say it right? So Schoology is the platform that we've adopted to house all curriculum materials. Teachers would be building courses in Schoology, and they would be teaching through Schoology for safety and security, of course, and for organizing the content. So students would be going through Schoology and completing assignments. The one thing about asynchronous learning is that students will have to turn in assignments following deadlines set by the teachers. So what would the schedule look like? Like I said, synchronous, asynchronous, and the third component is learning lab. Learning lab could either happen face-to-face in school, or it could happen virtually, where the teacher is meeting with a group of students. Again, students will be selected for learning lab based on their needs, and they will be contacted by teachers and principals to inform parents that the specific students or selected students have to attend learning lab. Of course, the parents have a choice. If they do not feel safe to come to school, and receive instruction in learning labs in small groups, they can say that they prefer the virtual learning lab. Ms. Candice mentioned the safety and security. All these activities are planned while looking at safety protocols, making sure that we're delivering instruction in small groups, making sure that all safety protocols are followed. As you can see, we had subcommittees representing all aspects of schooling to make sure that we are taking care of the whole child and at the same time of the safety protocols. So learning labs will, Mr. Mustanen mentioned a little bit, students with who are limited English speaking, students with special ed, and students who need support in social emotional aspects, even students who are not participating in learning. So every student is responsible to follow a schedule and complete the work. Students will not be sitting in front of a screen for 6 hours a day. So we made sure that we divided the time into synchronous and asynchronous. For elementary students, for example, the day starts at 8:55 and it ends at 3:50. The students will start their day with language arts and math. And during those blocks, language arts and math, the teacher will not be sitting and talking to the students for the entire time. Students can be working with a teacher, for example, for 15 and 20 minutes as a whole group. Then she can break the students into groups. And Zoom will allow you to do that, where you can break the students into small groups and they work on independent activity while the teacher goes into one of the Zoom rooms and she works with a specific child or group. And then she will embed, or he will embed, brain breaks. What we call brain breaks is the teacher will give students breaks. They can move around. She will assign them to do an independent activity for a few minutes, and then she will call them back. And breaks are embedded throughout the day. Elementary students will spend about 3.5 to 4 hours daily in what we call synchronous or live learning. We gave them 40 minutes lunch, we gave them breaks, and then after lunch, they would come back and they would do writing with social studies or writing with science. And then they have a special, which is art, music, gym, or enrichment. The rest of the afternoon, elementary students would be doing learning labs if they were selected for learning labs until 3:55. And the rest of the students would be doing asynchronous learning assigned by the classroom teacher. So that's what the day looks like for elementary. For secondary students, the same thing. The day starts for secondary at 8:15 and it ends at 3:10. Again, secondary students are doing synchronous learning for 3 hours, asynchronous learning for 3 hours. I'm going to repeat. Synchronous is live with a teacher in real time. Asynchronous, it's more like assignments. They complete them in Schoology, they submit them by the deadline. Secondary students too will have to come to learning labs if they were selected by the teacher or administrator to come to learning lab for a specific need. The one thing that's different with high school is that the synchronous learning for high school will happen in the afternoon because we thought of siblings in the same household. If you have an elementary and a high school student, this will give an opportunity to the elementary students to work live on the computer while the high school students are completing independent work so that we do not exhaust the internet in the households as much as we can. We know we can't control everything, but we're gonna try our best. High school students will be doing asynchronous learning in the morning, and their schedule will follow the A day, B day model like they normally do. They will do first, second hour on Monday, for example. They're gonna do, or opposite, they're gonna do 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3 on Tuesday. So every day they will do 3 hours live out of the 6, and the other 3 hours will be through Schoology asynchronous. Again, Learning Lab is embedded during asynchronous time. Asynchronous time, Learning Lab, and the Learning Lab could be happening face-to-face in the school following safety protocols. or the teacher may meet with the student through a small group session and do learning lab during asynchronous time while they're at home. I know it's a lot of information. Schedules will be posted in Schoology for students. Each individual school is posting information on their blog. They will be calling students. They will be having, like Dr. Maliko mentioned, soft start. Students will come and pick up materials, resources. We do have, we've adopted new resources in the district. So we have both digital and paper materials. So they have books for language arts and math. They will come and pick up their books, and they will also get their Chromebooks, schedules, login information, and anything that they need in the beginning of the school. I understand that we have not sent this information yet. Normally, in the typical year, we wait until the night before to tell students who their teachers are. This is not a typical year, and we're doing our best. The virtual learning program will follow the same schedule as well. Our virtual learning program in Dearborn resembles what we're doing in remote learning, because we really wanted the students to stay in touch with the teachers, and we wanted to make sure that we are monitoring their progress and we're not letting them learn. Like many other districts do asynchronous learning only in virtual, we are doing both. We're doing synchronous and asynchronous. So we're following the same schedule.
On this information, I know Ms. Faraj did a great job leading the written report that had to go to the county and then eventually the state, and working with the others, but we appreciate the great work. Also just wanted to mention, I'm glad that, you know, the committee and we decided the asynchronous and synchronous different elementary to secondary. And that's one of the reasons why we also decided not to have the same start time across the district, to give a little bit of flexibility with the time. We also thought it was so important to delay the start time in the morning. You know, it doesn't make sense to have students get up very early to start at 7:15 a.m., you know, when you're online. And so that may be something that we start looking at moving forward when we are back in person for looking at high school and or other, you know, flexible start times is what I would say for all levels, actually. The other thing I wanted to mention that with the online provides, and I know we're going to be looking at, and it's going to take us some time. It's going to be a phase in, and again, all these things, we don't expect everyone to know it right away. We expect that someone's going to not have an internet access, they're going to miss the lesson, or they may miss this, and you know, they can email the teachers if they miss things. But at the same token, we're going to have the ability through Schoology and Zoom to record as well. That doesn't mean we're recording the entire day, but the important content that we feel that, you know, somehow a student missed, you could actually put that up on the system. So we still got to work through those specifics, but that ability is there. And again, we're not saying we're going to be recording all day, because they're not going to be on all day or even the whole time, but there may be segments that a teacher may say, this is an important, you know, 4 or 5 students missed it or whatever. So this actual segment, I could, you know, record it. And that would be another advantage of the technology. So appreciate the work you've done, Ms. Faraj.
Thank you. One additional thing is that teachers will be taking attendance. They will be recording attendance in MyStar. If a student is late to the session, or if the student does not attend, parents are encouraged to email the teacher and communicate with the teacher. We are responsible to report attendance to the state. Like I said, whatever schedule and modalities we came up with, the stipulation is that we have to submit the hours and days, and we have to make sure that we are following, we're trying to normalize it as much as possible. So teachers will listen. Please talk to the teachers if you have any questions, and they will answer you within 24 hours. So teachers have a school day that also ends at 4, but we promise that to answer within 24 hours.
Well, and I think too, just so, you know, a lot of it, the decisions that were made were for the benefit of the students, but also understand a lot of the decisions were made were based on state legislation that passed. We have to follow state law and state regulations. So a lot of that came out of the legislation that was just passed and signed by the governor last week. So we were on top of that. Ms. Faraj was in the team. And so, you know, that was just last week. So again, we're a few days in and we were ready for it, is my point. So.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Faraj. We appreciate all that great information that you were able to provide And I know you're part of a bigger team, and we thank everybody on that team for all that they've done to contribute to all of this. Once again, reminding people, this type of information, the schedules and these types of things will be available on the school blogs or on the principal blog, or the teachers will be communicating this. It may not be tomorrow, may not be on Friday, but there will be that communication will be going on.
And I think you heard her say, like in a normal school year, class lists and rosters, and I was an elementary school principal, I was a middle school principal. It would be this Friday in a normal year at the end of the day that the list would be posted. So we're, but again, I understand this is a different time, but the reality is we're not doing anything outside of what we would normally do in a different year as far as class rosters and schedules and things like that. The Schoology would be the one thing, though, that is a major difference, I would say, than the normal year as far as getting information to parents and getting the Chromebooks and things of that nature. But again, I understand that there's a lot of nervousness and, tension, and, people are just stressed by the pandemic. And so people want to know, and we get it. And, I would just say, again, we're going to work with you, and we've gotten a lot of positive emails, and we've got questions, and we've got, we're willing to take the criticism too. But I will say that we're not perfect as well. And there's going to be some bumps and bruises, but we know together we'll get through it. So my approach is always, let's try to work together. If something doesn't work out, I'll apologize in advance and say, well, I'm sorry for that, but we'll do better next time. And I think that's what happened between the March shutdown to now. And it's not just us, it's all districts, not only in the state, but across the nation. We're thrown into something that we could never have planned for.
Right. And I know that several of us, we don't work in a vacuum here in the Dearborn Public Schools. We're part of many different organizations, professional organizations. We talk to our colleagues. I talk to communication people around the area. You talk to fellow superintendents. You're very well connected, not just here locally, but across the entire state. And so you're absolutely right. We are hearing these similar types of situations in districts across the state. We're all kind of working through this together.
I think the one thing, though, that we should pride ourselves on is we always take the lead in a lot of areas. And I feel very good about the fact that we continue to do that with our great team. As you can hear, the amount of information coming from these experts. Secondly, we listen to our stakeholders. I did not hear of, and I know a lot of districts brought stakeholders in, but over 30 teachers between the subcommittees involved in the committee, all staff represented, parents, students, board members, the union. We had two. So Miss Ali Bazzi was one of the chairs, along with the DFT president, Jane Mazza, and David Higgins. And yeah, you mentioned board members. Board has been standing with us together in partnership, showing leadership from the board president to all the individuals on the board. They've done an outstanding job sticking together, and they're dealing with questions and things, and and they're providing a lot of great input to me that comes to our district, because they're hearing from parents and we like that. We like that information that helps us. So we're happy that board members are serving and that we're all working together, because again, this is a community effort. And I've been interviewed by different press, and they say, well, what do you think about the numbers going up or whatever? And you and I were on a call yesterday through the governor's office that was local in Dearborn with the chief of police, the mayor, health officials. And so my thing is, and we took this off because we're allowed, because we're broadcasting, but we're doing these things that we need to do with the masks. You see me sanitizing all the time. Maybe I'm a little too much, but I'm washing my hands all the time. I used to do that before, but I'm doing it even more. And social distancing, all the things we need to do. Those are the important things. Following the rules. My family and we follow the rules when we're out doing things socially or outside. And that's how we're going to help, because it's not just going to be the schools. If we want to get in-person instruction, we've got to get those positivity rates down in the community so we feel comfortable bringing students back in person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
So another member of another one of our great team members, another one of the leaders here that has also been fielding a lot of questions, and we thought we would jump in and have him join us to answer some of those questions regarding our special populations. And so I'd like to bring in at this time our Executive Director of Special Populations, Mr. Mike Caselli. And Mike, thank you so much for joining us here this evening to talk a little bit about special populations. We have a large EL community of students in our schools. We have we have several center programs that serve our most at-risk and at-need students, whether it be physically challenged students, and we serve those students in our schools. And there's a lot of questions that have been out there about how will those students get their needs met in a virtual or remote learning environment. And so who better to bring on to answer those questions is Mr. Mike Caselli. Mike, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mustin, and thank you, Dr. Maleko, for having me. You know, as you mentioned very well, you know, special populations, you know, obviously has a special role in my heart, but also is very, very important when we think of distance or remote learning, or how we can, you know, best provide instruction. So I could tell you that, you know, just Ms. Faraj started by thanking members of the team. Well, I thank all those members, and exclusively on our special populations team, you know, Ms. Rose Bailey and Ms. Masalam, who I work very closely with the EL population, and then the special education team members, Ms. Pletsky, Mrs. West, our newest member, Mrs. Taylor, Mrs. Fournier, and Dr. Bazzi Gates, as well as other teachers, social workers, and psychologists who really come together over the summer to ensure that we're prepared for whatever it is, whatever mode of instruction we're in, to make sure we can service and best meet the needs of all of our students with special populations. I think Dr. Maleko says it best. I think it's very, very hard to replicate anything that we do face-to-face, especially when you're talking with some of our special population students. But, you know, I'm very, very fortunate that we have what I call superheroes in our district, with our special population teachers. You know, they've come together, they've reached out to me over the summer. They're very, very solution oriented, and they really want to do whatever it takes to ensure the needs of all students are being met. So I'm very, very grateful and thankful for them. We have many, many great things planned. And our model is going to be this. You know, it might not be perfect. It might not what we get on a day-to-day basis when we do in-person learning, but we're going to do whatever necessary to help mitigate that gap and help provide families and students with the special supports that they need. I'm going to first talk a little bit about special education, and then I'll go into what we will do for our EL populations as well. Now, for our families who have children with IEPs, the very first thing that you're probably going to have, and you probably went through this in the spring last year when we first shut down, is something that we call a contingency plan. Now, a contingency plan isn't made to replace an IEP. Basically, what a contingency plan is, it says, okay, now since we're doing remote instruction, okay, what is it specifically that your child needs to be successful during distance learning? Now, that can mean specific assistive technologies, you know, communication devices. Do they need packets as opposed to possibly virtual instruction? What will their learning labs look like? All of those things will be discussed during the contingency plan. In addition, it's our goal to ensure that we're providing the direct instruction to students with IEPs. So what that means is, you know, we're going to continue to have that collaborative approach with general education teachers. Our special education teachers will continue to co-teach and provide specially designed instruction within that synchronous time that Ms. Faraj was talking about. Now, whether that means co-presenting a lesson, whether that means, you know, possibly, I know we're using Zoom, and Zoom gives you the ability to break off into small groups or small rooms, you know, pulling some of our students who need that extra assistance to specialize, that will specifically specialize with that specially designed instruction to help meet their needs. In addition, we're also looking at the learning lab model. As Ms. Faraj very nicely stated, we're looking at learning labs to be both, you know, either virtually or in person. In person, what that would look like, or virtually, is we would work on with students who do have special needs on some of the maybe asynchronous or the independent learning things. We can work with them on some of the goals that they have. We can provide, you know, some of the therapies that they have, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. So we have a very well-rounded plan to help meet the needs of the students through this very, very challenging time in education. Now, you know, I know I've been fielding a lot of questions as to, you know, what is physical therapy going to look like? Well, we know the nature of physical therapy is usually hands-on and face-to-face. So how does that look like remotely? Well, a couple things that we're going to do is we're going to work very collaboratively with the families. You know, some of the unintended consequences, I guess, of remote learning, and this is not so much a consequence, but a positive, is we really did, our physical therapists really did get the opportunity to really meet and work with families. And what they started doing was providing home exercise programs for the families to work with their students on, in addition to providing some of those consultation. Now, I had a very, very positive meeting today with two of our physical therapists, Ms. Schwartzy and Ms. Kusner, who I could tell you are extremely dedicated to the families and are going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we're delivering some of those service models. They're also going to be times where they're part of the learning labs, and we're going to be able to provide, you know, obviously with all the safety precautions that we discussed earlier, provide some of those services, you know, face to face. In addition, we're also going to train all of our speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, and school social workers on teletherapy. We've also purchased a platform that's both HIPAA and FERPA compliant that is actually aligns well to the teletherapy model. Now, for those of you who maybe don't know what teletherapy is, it is providing the speech and language services, the school social work service, the occupational service through a distance or virtually. Now, the real neat thing about the program that we're looking at is not only does it provide training and resources for our staff, it also provides training and resources for families as well, which I think is extremely important during this remote time. And it's also going to, just a side note as well, we're going to make sure that that training is provided in the Arabic language too. Now, for students who have English learner needs, our English language development specialists are going to work again closely with the general education teacher to ensure that specially designed instruction is happening for our students with EL needs. They're also going to be hosting some of these virtual and in-person learning labs as well to ensure that they're providing some of that specially designed instruction through that piece as well. So it's very, very possible that if you have a son or daughter, whether they have an IEP or whether they're designated as an EL, that they will be available to get these supports, you know, 4 to 5 days a week through a learning lab to help mitigate some of that, you know, some of the challenges that remote or distance learning does bring.
You do in special ed and all the teachers, because I know they can be challenging jobs, and the teachers that I've seen that I've visited in the class, they absolutely love their students, and they go above and beyond, and just as all teachers do, but it does take a special person to be a special education teacher, and so I give them a lot of credit for the care that they put into their job for their students. And Mike, we appreciate your leadership, leading the way, advocating for both the special education population and the English language learners and the newcomers and all the students in our district. And so I think that's important. You know, you were instrumental in really pushing for the learning labs and making sure that we have those available for our students. So thanks again, Mike, and look forward to working with our students. And I think I had said, David, I've been public about this before. One of the populations I was most concerned about was special education. And our English language learner newcomer students. I've been very public about that going back to March.
Right.
And so I'm glad that we can do things. Again, it's not as good as in person every day, but you know, it's something that we can do given the health crisis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Mike and his team have just, I mean, you really demonstrating how you and your team are ready and willing to go above and beyond to do what you need to do to continue to provide those services. They may look a little bit different. They may have to be done a little bit different. Those staff members may need additional PPEs as opposed to other staff members, but those are things that are going to be in place as well to protect our families, protect our staff members, keep everybody safe while still being able to deliver those services. Hats off to Mike and his team.
Well, and here's a point you just, I want to mention too, is that everything that's in the governor's order that is required, we're doing, obviously. There are highly recommended areas that we are requiring in Dearborn schools. So we're not just, one of them is the mask provision. We're requiring it at all levels. However, we understand that some special education or other students may not for health reasons or other reasons, or, you know, kindergarten. So we have flexibility, and that's why we have some of that PPE, whether it be the plexiglass or the shields, or even for speech and language, he has these masks I know that have kind of a clear screen but they still wrap around. So those are the kind of things that we've been working on to allow and provide support for students that may not be able to wear the mask or do the other things that other students can do.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. So thank you again, Mike Caselli, Executive Director of Special Populations here in Dearborn. Thank you for joining us. So the next area that we want to touch on, and I do want to let everybody know that we are scheduled to run to 7:15. We've had a lot of great information to present, and this is the beauty of live TV and streaming TV. We have that flexibility to run a little bit later. We'll probably run till 7:30 just to make sure that we get in all of our information. We still have one more special guest to join us. We want to get to a few questions as well. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to get to our next expert on our panel. He is the gentleman in charge of operations for our district, and that is the looking after and making sure that all of our buildings are clean and safe, and some of the procedures that we'll be using. So joining us is our Director of Operations, Mr. Mark Andrews. Mark, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate that.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me here tonight to be able to talk about what we have done and what we're going to do. So I'll be a little bit more brief than our other experts, but some important information here. So that'll help us on our time. So I'll dive right into it. So just recently, we wrapped up our summer cleaning where our outstanding engineer and custodial staff, they take the furniture out of every classroom and clean starting literally from the ceiling and working our way down to the floors. We already put our engineers through new COVID disinfecting training. And actually today we just put all of our custodial staff through that same training. So moving forward, we're going to incorporate some online training for if we get some new employees on board, and if by chance we get some,
we should both put our mask on and do the elbow
method. So right now what we're doing is we're transitioning into supporting the administration and instructional staff as they begin their instruction. Just to name a few, here's what we plan on doing. So we already have a good supply of PPE items, which include, but not all, just to name some. We have face coverings, disposable face coverings, face shields, and we have gloves. We have disinfectant in both spray bottles and larger amounts to refill those bottles. All disinfectants, I just want to be clear, all disinfectants that we use, they have been confirmed to kill the COVID virus. So we also have sanitizing wipes on hand, lots of those. We have sanitizer, both in small bottles and hands-free pedestals that we're getting out to all the schools. We've also purchased electrostatic disinfecting units that will help with disinfecting the buildings. We haven't received those yet, but we're supposed to be getting those real soon here. We just placed another large order of reusable face masks. This is, the nice polyester ones that you and Dr. Maleko are showcasing tonight. They're going to be just like that. We just ordered enough to give 2 to every staff member and student when we need to. And we also just placed another large order of more PPE items. So as we start using these next Monday. So typically, most of our custodial staff are scheduled to start their shift at the end of the school day. But for the beginning of this year, we're going to change that and we're going to keep them all on schedule. We're going to work with the administrators and we're going to have them in the buildings working side by side with the instructional staff to make sure that all those sanitizing touch points and all those are being met that were set forth in the state's roadmap to school returning. Just to make sure, we'll use checklists to keep track to make sure everything is being done properly and when it was done last. We also have worked out a schedule to utilize other work classifications to help in areas that we may need some extra labor. So that's a great win-win since it will allow us to keep all our employees working across the district. We also our trades this summer. They've been working real hard to install plexiglass sneeze guards in all our offices to where those staff members have to meet and greet the public. But more importantly, we know this school year is going to offer up some challenges. So most importantly, we've started to prep all our support staff to be aware of that and to please be flexible and work through these challenges. But lastly, I'm very proud of all of our staff. We were the first school district back in March to have to face this virus, and our staff stepped up to the challenge and has done an outstanding job since. So, moving forward, I'm confident that they're gonna maintain those great efforts.
leadership, and I've seen it with you, your team, you know, Matt, Gary, everyone working with Tom Wall, and everyone in the department, our outstanding engineers, our great custodians. And I went to the engineer training, you know, earlier in the month, I think, or it was actually, I think, the end of July, and everyone's taken things very seriously, working hard. You know, Gary's been very proactive, and Mark. There's been a lot going on, and there's a lot coming at us. We're getting tremendous amount of email from vendors that want to have us purchase PPE, and we have to sort through all that, and that's why we have a process. And Mark, you know, you're doing a great job with the team. Today, I was with your former director of transportation. I was with the transportation staff at Fordson, and you know, they're going to be important. You mentioned about flexibility with going into different classifications of work, but we're also going to have a need for transportation with the learning labs. We know that, and delivery of materials. So we just have great workers. Again, we work well with our unions, and appreciate your leadership. You know, we talk about our great teachers, and we have the most outstanding teachers in the state and in the nation for that matter, but we have the most outstanding staff as well.
Absolutely.
And it comes down to everyone working together for our awesome students. So, you know, appreciate the work you're doing, Mark, and all the cleaning and all the things. It's been extremely professional. And I know you were part of the, you know, the overall committee, working in subcommittee to make sure we received all that, working together for the health and safety, you know, of our students and our staff. So, and our community.
Absolutely. Well, and I know, Mark, your guys have been out there installing those big plexiglass shields in all the reception areas and things like that. So commonly referred to as sneeze guards. And so they're almost, they're like superheroes. They're like the, you know,
Yes.
sneeze guard heroes of the district, installing all of those. We want to thank them for doing all of that in a short amount of time as well.
Yeah,
Another
and we
layer.
we have ordered some of those, some portable to go in and out of learning labs as well.
Perfect.
So as needed, depending on the need.
Mark, thank you so much for jumping in here and joining us tonight, sharing a little bit about what is going on and what has taken place in the operations of our school. One quick area that just to touch on, we talked about a little bit about transportation. Right now, we're not really transporting students because we're starting online. If we were to come to that, there would be those safety protocols in place as well, correct?
Yeah, that would be correct.
All right. So we know that we would have, if it comes to that time where we're transporting students, we would have more information about all of that because we do have those protocols in place. But right now we're all online. So
yeah, and the staff were, you know, when I was there briefly this morning, just shortly after 9 to talk to the staff, they were going through training today. And some of those questions came up about entry and other things related to COVID. So the staff are getting well informed and trained in those areas as well.
Great. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. So, you know, that's our panel of experts. We kind of tried to touch on a variety of areas, the big areas that we know we've been getting a lot of questions about as far as our daily schedules and operations and technology and all of those areas. There are a few other questions that have come in, and I thought maybe we would take a few minutes just to answer some of those that have popped up. Put on my glasses here so I can make sure I'm reading these correctly. You know, that's another thing too. I've noticed, let's see. So we've got Schoology, synchronous and asynchronous. We're building up a vocabulary here. Maybe later you'll have to.
Well, I think Ms. Farage will be your best bet, David. She can help you out.
You can help me out with all that. Keep me in line. So we have a virtual learning program. We talked a little bit about that. It is the program for those students, those parents who say, you know, even if you are able to come back into some kind of blended learning program, maybe October, November, sometime later in the year, I really don't feel comfortable with that. I want my student to be online all year. That's our virtual learning program. Maybe just touch a little bit about the students in those programs. Who are the teachers? What is the curriculum?
Sure. So, I mean, that was a decision made by the committee early on. They came to me and said, this is back in early July when they did the survey, I think at the end of June to the community, because we saw, I think it was approximately 30% that said, no matter what you do, we're not sending our students back. Well, it kind of matches our almost 5,000. It may end up being a little bit over 4,500 approximately of 21,000. So that's a quarter of our students approximately that enrolled in the virtual option. Now, I understand it also, creates some confusion because there is we're starting online, but what about this other program? Well, we did that because, in another month, and according to legislation, we have to make a decision every month. So the board, I could be recommending to the board that we come back in person. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we don't know based on the conditions. So this gives parents a sense of security, if that they can stay online for the whole year. And I would say that even in a non-pandemic year, we would want to continue with this kind of program. We'll probably have less numbers, but we can offer that because some parents still, they like the virtual. That's fine. It's providing support to the parents. So the difference is this is a major issue for human resources. I got to tell you, the human resources staff working with Ms. Patterson, Dr. Chokol, Ms. Faraj, the union, Mr. Caselli, all of them together working very hard under a tight time frame, because basically, if you think of that amount of staff, we had to then put enough staff into that program. Now, I will say this, that we are right now able to identify staff that are in the virtual program, and it's specific to elementary, because we understand from our experience, and I was an elementary principal, is that it's too detrimental to start shifting students throughout the year. With secondary, you have more flexibility because as you're offering classes, remember, they have more than one teacher during the day. Elementary, it doesn't have that flexibility. We don't want to be shifting teachers partway through the year. So if you're in the virtual, you'll be with that teacher for the entire year, unless you elect to do something different as a parent. Okay. And of course, we'll try to help that, but we're not going to do that. So we have to shift a massive number. If you think about 5,000 students, that could be over 1,000, for example, at the elementary. So you have to have enough staff members. You have to shift out of buildings into. Thankfully, HR, Ms. Ali Bazzi worked with Ms. Mazza, had some suggestions, and we were able to get a lot of teachers that volunteered for the program. Thank you to our teachers for doing that. Absolutely. Those that want that. And it also allows the teacher more flexibility with whether they're working from home in the building. So that might be a good option for some teachers. So we thank them. And so for elementary, that's the way it goes. For the secondary, again, we know that shifting, secondary classes shift for the most part, especially at the high school, at the semester break anyway. Right. So we would be easily able to shift classes and courses. And we believe that even in a case where students maybe, if for some reason we were back, we don't know, in person at the high school, we can still run virtual and classes simultaneously. We have that ability. We have to work with the teachers. So that's why we decided that we have to move on the elementary. We've got that set up. We also told staff that would still be part of the building. And so for the parents too, that we would all still make them feel part of whatever, building that they're assigned to with that teacher, and that they can communicate and they would be part of that community. So it is something that's going to be a shift. But again, we did this based on the parent survey.
So important for parents to know, if they're in the virtual learning program, elementary, they're going to have an elementary teacher from Dearborn, a Dearborn Public Schools, elementary teacher.
Dearborn Public Schools curriculum.
And Dearborn Public Schools curriculum. If I live in the Gear Park attendance area, but I'm in the virtual learning program, I would still go to Gear Park if I needed supplies, a Chromebook, those types of things.
Yes.
Still go to my home elementary school.
Correct.
For that connection. So I'm still connected to that, but I'm in the virtual learning program.
Yes.
Just to be clear, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So you could have students that are from different schools in the same class of the virtual learning, because it's virtual.
Sure.
And so that would be a main difference.
So a first grade class may have students from Duval, Gear Park, and William Ford
Lindbergh, or yes,
in Lindbergh.
However, although we are going to try to match, we're trying to match up the students from the same schools.
Right. We're trying
as
to
much
keep
as
as much as we can.
But we can't. There's not going to be 100%.
Yeah, we can't guarantee that
because of the numbers.
Right.
Because in some places we had more students enrolled from certain schools. So understand that reduces enrollment in the regular curriculum, the non-virtual regular school.
Yeah.
And so then we had to shift staff to make up for that.
Gotcha.
Either in or out. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. All right.
So, and I know it still sounds confusing, but we understand staffing. So we're talking to the public. These are things that we had to do to make this work. Know that we're making virtual learning work because of the parent requests.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, bottom line.
So we know that there are parents who, they work during the day. Their kids may not get the lessons. We want kids, there's this synchronous and asynchronous where they have to be part of that school day. If a student misses a lesson during the day, is there opportunity to see that lesson later?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned earlier in the program, you know, we're gonna be phasing into that. So we can't expect that on day one we're gonna have all these lessons right away, because remember, we're doing a soft start phase in. So don't anticipate that's gonna happen the first week.
Right.
But what's gonna happen is, as we get better with Schoology and as we enhance our ability to use different functions or the Zoom, as Mr. Patterson was talking about, then we will have that capability to do that long term. So give us some time, but it's not going to happen day one. It's going to take some time. And again, we have a couple of weeks of phase in for this new process.
Great.
But definitely, you know, the technology is there. It makes sense to me to allow flexibility for parents and families.
Sure.
They still will have attendance, though, requirements based on state law. So it doesn't mean that you could do that every single lesson. There's got to be a two-way communication with the teacher and the students. So you can't expect that the teacher's going to be able to communicate with the students in the evening. If it's available, that's fine, but doesn't mean that the staff will be available in the evening. It just means that there may be some lessons or materials available.
That are available. Okay, very good. We talked a little bit about every month now legislation was passed that requires our Board of Education to assess where we are every month to see if we can move back to some form of in-person instruction, whether it be half days or whether it be every other day or whatever. What are some of the benchmarks that the school board, the administration might be using to determine if it's safe to go back?
Well, Ms. Candace talked about some of it at the study session, and I think it's a multiple measures approach. You're looking at the positivity rate, and I mentioned, you know, as we just saw a spike locally, so that doesn't help us. We look at that. We are going to look at how the learning labs are implemented. We know certain information from the athletics and how we've had to deal with that over the summer with some of the programs starting up. So we're going to have some of the specific data sets that we can look at. But we're also going to look at some of our anecdotal data just based on what our interactions and what's going on locally. So I think the local Dearborn numbers are critical, but the broader numbers are also important because of the hospital rates and other things that we're going to look at. Now, the governor obviously would intervene on those kind of data sets, but those are still things we're looking at. I would also say to you, we're not going to base anything on other districts, but obviously you're going to learn things from other districts that may have success, or you know, those that have decided to come either hybrid or in person, not only in Wayne County, but because I believe most are going online in Wayne County, or a large number, but even how other schools, districts are dealing with it. We know in other states that opened up in early August, because they're on a different calendar year than us, that there's been, you know, we can learn from them as well with some of the trials and tribulations and difficulties they've had. Now we're going to base it on those. Sure. But all that information is kind of under a multiple measures approach. So, you know, if you know, the CDC said 5% positivity rate, we were hovering right around that. And I think we need to get that lower within the local community to be able to bring the in-person so that people feel comfortable. I'd also say that, you know, again, our protocols and our phasing, if people are following the rules and doing their part, both in the district and out in the community, then we have a better chance of that occurring. You know, other things that happen, or you may have recommendations from the governor too that come forward. So here's another one. Right now we're in phase 4. You know, we feel uneasy about in-person instruction in phase 4. It's allowed, but if we could get the state or our region up to phase 5 in the governor's order, people would feel a lot more comfortable about in-person instruction. So if the governor declared phase 5, I think that's when we would seriously have to look at bringing in person. So it's going to be upon all of us in the state and in the local area to get us to phase 5 of the infection rate under the governor's order.
That's, yeah, very important. Obviously plays a big role in the overall impact. I think that's vitally important what you said about, you know, just because another district is doing it one way, we shouldn't be looking and saying that's how we need to do it. We're a district of 21,000 students. We bus 4,000 to 5,000 of our students. Most of our students, you know, are free and reduced lunch. We have high special populations numbers as well. How we do it and how we, you know, configure how our schools look is going to be a lot different than a school district that has 3,000 students with no busing whatsoever. That's a very different dynamic.
We have one high school that could equal a district of 3,000 students almost, and almost did at one point. So,
Right.
and, you know,
Right.
we were talking about expansion. So that's the difference that we're dealing with Dearborn Public Schools. If you've ever been in the passing time at Fortson High School or Dearborn High, you understand that social distancing is not possible with that many students in the building at the same time. It just is
Absolutely.
not possible. So that's why we have to do a better job. You know, we are. I think people are doing the things they need to do, but we got to keep it up and follow the federal rules. And hopefully, you know, our leaders, both at the state and, you know, if we do our part and at the national level can lead us out of this and, you know, get us the vaccine or whatever it may be. So next year or whenever that may be, that we're comfortable coming back.
Yeah.
We want to be back.
Absolutely. Testing. What about testing? NWEA, SAT. What
Yeah,
are those? How are we going to work those things?
We're going to continue with NWA. You know, maybe we can have Mr. Patterson come at some point on another one of these another show to talk about it. There's waivers from the state for all the assessments, and that was done for a reason. The SAT was waived back in April, but those students, if we're allowed to, the state had said that they may allow it in October, but now we'll have to see. It's going to be up to the state. Now that is state that pays for that SAT testing that's required. People have asked, well, you can go to the college board and you can sign up as well. Now the district doesn't manage that. The district can provide information through Dr. Patterson and his office. So we do under the legislation though have to do benchmark testing for all our students. That is required under the legislation. So we use the NWA for that and other assessments depending on the level. And then as far as validity and reliability, we'll have to make a decision on how we do that since we're starting out virtually.
And one last question here, and then I'll give you some time to wrap it up. We have an outstanding team of nurses. We heard from one of them earlier in the program. Question is, will there be a healthcare professional in each and every school throughout the day?
No, there won't. I'll just be honest. We have several nurses in the district, but we just don't right now have the budget for it. And I wish we could.
Right.
It's just like we're at the board meeting and people, you know, more counselors and social workers. Yeah, we would love them. But you know what? We need funding to do that. And
Sure.
so having said that, our nurses are doing a great job, given the number, as you're aware. And what they will be doing is they're providing protocols and training. And we do have a COVID, I can't remember what they call it, a manager, or at each building, there's working with the principal, but there's someone that has to oversee any COVID type situations in the health and safety at every building. That's
kind
part
of
of
point
the plan.
person
A
at
point
every
person,
at every building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're not necessarily a nurse, but they're obviously working with the nurses, and they'll be trained through the nurses and what Ms. Candace was mentioning. So
all of our nurses are assigned buildings, and they kind of rotate around.
Yeah, they rotate.
So there is
They're
touch,
accessible.
They
can
touch
call.
all the buildings at
Yeah.
some point in time.
Correct.
So it's not like any one building is ever
Yes.
going to be without
Yeah.
that resource.
Correct.
So-
They do a great job. They really do.
We have only a few minutes left here before we wrap things up. And I want to give you a few moments to close this out, Glenn, and share any thoughts maybe with our community that you'd like to share with them in regards to our plans moving forward and our opening day, which is just coming up
Yeah.
here in a few days.
Well, I want to say thank you, David, and your team, Eric, Jacob, Katie, for putting this together, because behind the scenes, there's a lot of things going on. We talk about technology, it can work and doesn't work. Well, they do a great job to make sure it works. And, you know, I got to tell you, Eric really is on my 1-minute messages that the students told me to do. And I'm sending him those all the time, and he's working with me, and your team does a great job. Appreciate your leadership. So I
great
just thought that they need to get a little bit of recognition
Well,
with
thank
you and your leadership. And I think our communication system, and, you know, we've done this nationally, is second to none. We've authored nationally. We know what is out there. We're trying to hit multiple ways to communicate. Here's another one. Of course, we can always improve, but I think we lead the way. We have a great connection. So to the community, you know, I look forward to the start of the year. It's going to be a difficult year. We need to stick together. We need to support each other. This is something that none of us wanted. None of us wanted to be in a pandemic, and you know, but we're going to get through it together. We are going to have challenges ahead. We are going to have positive test cases. Let's just put that out there. We, as I mentioned, know that in-person learning is better. All these factors come into play, but ultimately it's the health and safety of the community, and we will continue to move forward. Dearborn Schools has always led the way. So I truly wish you and your families all the best. my thoughts and prayers to go out to anybody who has suffered as a result of the COVID-19, whether that be from the loss of a loved one or a family member or just some stress or adversity that they've faced. Thank you to all our essential workers. Thank you to our frontline, our first responders and our healthcare professionals for the great work that they've been doing. And thank you to our Dearborn community, to our staff, to our awesome staff, our teachers, our administrators. We always work together, and we're going to continue to do that. Our non-instructional staff, working with our great parents, and of course, our #1 student population. So look forward to seeing you virtually, maybe online, maybe Facebook, maybe in person. But we will be doing, the social distance, and we will be doing our part, David. And I've been doing this, and you've been doing it, and we've all been doing it, to wear our masks, to sanitize. And no disrespect to you, David, but I will not shake your hand because that is not what we can do. And so when I see people in the community understand that that's the routine.
That's the routine.
And no disrespect to anybody.
Nope.
This is just what we need to do. And I think when this thing happened, it was something that was new, and we got to get used to it. But we got to avoid these things that we know will help. So wear your mask, please. Social distance. Stay out of the large gatherings and do your part, because we want our students physically back in school, but we can't do that unless we get the numbers down in the community. Again, wishing you all the best, and we're going to get through this. I'm confident we will. Thank you to everyone out there, and have a good night.
Thank you for taking some time to join us here live on Facebook,
live on our YouTube channel, and of course on Channel 19, our cable channel. Please keep checking those resources. Our school website, our district website has resources available there that are just a click away. Continue to check our social media post as well. The superintendent has a very robust social media network, and you can follow him, and he always has great information and updates as well.
اكيد كان هيدا هو البث المباشر اللي عملوه مدارس ديربورن العامه ليتحدثوا فيه عن خطتهم لاعاده فتح المدارس ما رح تفتح للتعليم بقلب المدارس، رح تكون التعليم عن بعد عن طريق الانترنت. نقط سريعه جدا، ما بدي اطول عليكم، إن هو الايفنت بحد ذاته كان طويل 1.5 ساعة تقريبا. بشكل عام في نقاط محدده بدي احكي عنها. نسألوا عن موضوع الامتحانات الرسمية، قالوا إنه الام ستاب رح يكون عليه ويف، ما رح يعملوه، بس رح يعملوا NWEA exam رح يعملوه. ونسألوا عن SAT، هيدا اللي بياخدوه الهاي سكول ستودنتس من المرحلة الثانوية، كمان ما قدروا يجاوبوا على هذا السؤال لأنه بعد ما عندهم تعليمات من الستيت لحد الآن، لأنه الستيت هي اللي بتدفع حقه لهذا الامتحان. فهيدا بالنسبة للامتحانات الرسمية. بالنسبة لدوام المدارس، الدوام رح يكون في الدوام للمرحلة الابتدائية رح يكونوا من الساعة 9 إلى 5، يعني 8:55 الصبح للساعة 4 إلى 10 ل 3:50 PM بعد الظهر. بشكل عام بكل المراحل الطلاب رح يتعلموا 3 ساعات لايف، يعني مع الأستاذ لايف 3 ساعات على الكمبيوتر، و3 ساعات رح يكونوا هودي assignment بيعملوه هون ضمن نطاق كمان زوم أو سكولاجي. إن شاء الله بنجيب الاسم تمام، حتى ديفيد ما كانش يعرف يقوله للاسم. فبشكل عام المرحلة الابتدائية رح يبلشوا على الساعة 8:55 للساعة 3 و 3:50، يعني 4 إلى 10، يعني من 9 إلى 5 لل 4 و10. و خلينا نعمل ريموف بيرفكت. طيب المرحله الابتدائيه رح يكونوا من الساعه 8:55 للساعه 3:50. 3 ساعات الصبح رح يكونوا لايف، وبعدين 3 ساعات مش لايف، يعني مش مع الانتراكشن. الميدل سكول مدرسة من الساعة 8:15 للساعة 3:10، كمان 3 ساعات رح يكونوا مباشر مع الأساتذة، و3 ساعات رح يكونوا assignment. الهاي سكول المرحلة الثانوية رح كمان يكونوا 3 ساعات، بس ال3 ساعات المباشر مع الأساتذة ما رح يكونوا الصبح، رح يكونوا بعد الظهر، يعني بعد الساعة 12 رح يكونوا. كمان 3 ساعات لايف مع المعلمة، او الاستاذ، و3 ساعات رح يكونوا assignment. ورح يفتحوا learning labs يعني مثل هودي، ومش للكل learning labs، الاستاذ والمعلمه هن بيحددوا مين في يجي على هودي learning labs، وفيكم تستعملون لحتى، والاساتذه رح يكونوا موجودين لحتى يجاوبوا عن السؤالات حسب ما بيسمح لهم الوقت، وضمن 24 ساعه فيهم يجاوبوا على السؤال. كمان قالوا انه الطلاب اللي عندهم حالات خاصه وتحديات خاصه سبيشال اد ليرنينج ستودنتس، هودي كمان الليرنينج لابز رح يستعملوا الليرنينج لاب، بالاضافه لانه اشتروا برنامج مخصص لحتى يقدروا يعلموا هودي الطلاب عن بعد. الطلاب اللي هن انجلش ليرنر يعني ما بيعرفوا كتير انجليزي، والطلاب اللي هن بيسموهم سبيشال اد يعني هودي الطلاب الذين لديهم تحديات خاصه. فبشكل عام هيدي النقاط ذكروها اليوم. تحدثوا كتير عن قصة إنه الوضع راح يكون صعب ومنه قليل والكل لازم يتحملون وكل هذا الموضوع، فأكيد يعني هيدي القصة رح تكون جديدة للكل. فبشكل عام حبينا نطلع، حبينا نعرض هيدا البث المباشر، نعرف عنا كتير عالم من ديربورن بيحضرونا، فحبينا انه يكون في هيدا البث المباشر لنقدر انه نعطيكم كل هذه المعلومات بالنسبة لمدارس ديربورن، شو خطتهم لحتى يرجعوا على المدارس وكيف رح يعلموا كيف الدوام. اكيد في ويب سايتس حطوهم هن لحتى تقدروا تاخذوا هيدي المعلومات، والويب سايت تبعهم هو dearbornschools.org، وكمان في ويب سايت مخصصينه خصوصا لكل الاسئله عن العوده الى المدارس، اسمه بعتقد باك تو سكول، يعني بتروحوا على dearbornschools.org ومحطوطه باول بالصفحه الرئيسيه باك تو سكول يعني العوده الى المدارس. بعتقد المعلومات متوفره باللغه العربيه وباللغه الانجليزيه، وبشكل عام هن رح يعطوا كروم بوكس للاولاد اللي ما عندهمش كمبيوترات، وعم بيحاولوا يعملوا فندريزر هلا للاولاد اللي ما عندهمش انترنت بالبيت. فتواصلوا على طول مع المدارس ومع المعلمه، وكل مدرسه تواصلوا معها لتقدروا تحصلوا على المعلومات اللي انتم بدكم اياها بالنسبه لعوده الطلاب الى المدارس. ان شاء الله ديربورن بابليك سكولز مدارس ديربورن العامه اول يوم مدارس رح يكون باغست 31 يعني الجمعه الجايه نهار الاثنين، ب 31 اغسطس اول نهار مدرسه. اول 5 ايام رح يكونوا نص نهار من الساعه 8 الصبح تقريبا للساعه 11 الظهر، و يعني نص نهار ما في نهار كامل. ومن ابتداء من سبتمبر 5 او سبتمبر 8 بعتقد بيرجع ببلشوا كدوام كامل. فهيدا هو الموضوع، حبينا نحن نعطيكم المعلومات عن ديربورن بابليك سكولز، شو رح يعملوا شو صار. هيدي هي المعلومات. اذا حيلا حدا عنده سؤال فيكم تبعتوا لنا سؤالكم على الانبوكس تبعنا، وانا بعرف في كثير عالم تواصلوا معنا عن هيدا الموضوع، ففيكم تبعتوا لنا مسج ورساله ونحن ان شاء الله بنقدر نجاوبكم عن هذا الموضوع. بس حبيت اعمل ترجمه انا باخر البث لحتى نقول لكم شو حكوا وشو هو الدوام رح يكون. بس بشكل عام كل المراحل التعليميه من الاليمنتري من الابتدائي للهاي سكول رح يتعلموا 3 ساعات مباشره مع المعلمه او الاستاذ، و3 ساعات كمان رح يكونوا على الكمبيوتر بس بيعملوا assignment يعني بيعملوا الفروض والواجبات المدرسيه. فهيدي كانت، ورح يعطونا بريكس كمان يعني ما بين هذه الساعات رح يكون في فواصل ورح يكون استراحات للطلاب 10 دقائق او ربع ساعه. فهيدي هي المعلومات اللي حبينا نعطيكم اياها. بتشكركم كلكم على متابعتكم لان هيدا بس مباشر هيك بسيط كان، بس كنا عم ننقل فيك وقائع اللي صارت لهيدا لمدارس ديربورن. ان شاء الله نحن بكره على الساعه 10 بالليل رح نطلع حتى نشرح مواضيع اكثر ونتحدث عن مواضيع اكثر مثل ما بنعمل كل جمعه. فتابعونا بكره. كان معكم حسين هاشم من واتساب ميديا نتورك. تصبحوا على الف خير وعسى ان تكونون في خير وسلامه على طول. شكرا، الى اللقاء.